Thank you. I want to thank Teresa and Karen for giving me this opportunity.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the sun breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene on the Ghana south, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to stop, for the sun to rise.
I stand before you today as a representation of many women in this country whose voices are challenged, silenced, and oftentimes go unheard. Voices of women who carry the weight of the world on their shoulders and the very life of the world in their wombs. Women with a rich history of survival who are now fighting to not only survive, but thrive. I, Cessilye, am a Black woman, not the person you claim to not see through language that erases me. I don't see color, because to see color makes you uncomfortable. No, I am a Black woman, a woman whose deep roots are embedded within the fabric of this country, much like the roots of the poplar trees that supported the strange fruits of Black men, women, and children swinging in the southern breeze. Those roots are deep and strong, and those trees stand today. Those trees remind me that this is no time to play. I'm here to amplify voices that cry out from the dirt from which they lay. Those voices stripped from their homeland, stripped of their cultures, stripped of their clothing, language, and identity. Will you just take a moment to see and bear with the unpleasantries? Those voices of women, Black women, who endured a hardship unlike anything anyone has ever seen. Battered and torn, raped and scorned, like Fannie Lou Hamer, sterilized without her consent. There is a trend here. We must repent. Do you ever wonder why your message gets immediately shut down? Let's unpack history, address infant and maternal mortality, and humanize the opposition. History tells us that Black women have never been free. Through the inhumane practices of chattel slavery, where forced reproduction was common and financially lucrative to those in power, to the unmerited forced sterilization of Black women, and now the travesty of our healthcare system, which buries more Black women and babies at disproportionate rates to white women and their children. Not through abortion, though, but through childbirth-related causes in a child's first year of life. The pro-life movement is known for amplifying the voices of first and second wave feminists while ignoring the womanists, the Black women, who may be screaming bodily autonomy, yes, but who have much more to say. Womanism not only fights for gender equality, but for justice against racial oppression, against African American men and women. The movement is quick to spout statistical information of Black women in terms of abortion, but lags behind when looking at the big picture that has always painted Black men and women as immoral, promiscuous, negligent, and labeled as welfare queens and thugs. This goes beyond name-calling. Similar to the roots of the poplar trees mentioned above, these roots run just as deep. For no longer does the stench of strange fruit hanging from trees permeate our senses and stain our eyes. No, the trees produce something beautiful to the naked eye, but to Black people, when we take a bite, it's poison. You see, the roots run deep, but they've been infected, injected with something that affects every system in play. Our healthcare system, educational system, judicial system, economic system. These systems were created in such a way that ignored and now oppress Black and brown people today. How, you might ask? Well, let me tell you. In fact, just look around you. While abortion is the focus of this conference, let me peel back the layers that keep many on the defense. We've already touched on slavery and forced sterilization, but what about the women who have chosen life to begin with? Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die due to childbirth-related causes than white women. Black babies die at 2 to 3 times the rate of white babies before they reach their first birthday. So what are we going to do about it? Many believe that eliminating abortion is the answer to our plight, but there is something deeper here that should give us pause. That pause is filled with seeds of inequality and inequity. Now, before you begin to think that maternal mortality is a poverty issue, consider this. Educated Black women are at a higher rate of maternal morbidity and mortality than white women without a high school diploma. You see, when I think of justice, I fall in line with most of what reproductive justice activists would say. Reproductive justice is the complete physical, mental, spiritual, political, economic, and social well-being of women and girls. The only thing that separates myself and the founders of this term is that I extend this justice to the womb. Reproductive justice activists may fight for bodily autonomy, but one thing they have that I have noticed along my journey of pro-life activism is that they are not the enemy. The real enemy lies in the systems at play that make this even an issue. A system that stamped Black people as property from the very beginning. The lack of equity amongst children of the diaspora is evident in our healthcare, education, judicial, housing, and economic system. From redlining, white flight, bombings, Jim Crow, Brown versus Board, Tuskegee, you name it, inequality and inequity has plagued my community. Riches won't hide racism when your name is Shaniqua versus Cindy. Implicit and explicit biases are killing us. I would like you to take a moment and imagine yourself in the shoes of a few Black women. Imagine you are pregnant and on Medicaid, a pregnant single mother of 5, a college-educated pregnant woman named Shaniqua, a pregnant 15-year-old, pregnant and living in a food desert with no transportation, pregnant working mother with no vacation or personal time off. What do these women have in common? Well, they are pregnant and at risk. They are at risk of being discriminated against via implicit and explicit biases. Implicit bias refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. If you are human, you have unconscious bias. However, it is our biases that are essentially killing Black women. How, you might ask? Well, let's take a look at the pregnant woman on Medicaid. She's at risk because of what the culture has painted women, Black women, to be when on government assistance. Remember the welfare queen? Needless to say, Black women are not leading the charge in Medicaid usage. White women are. Medicaid paints Black women as leeches from the very beginning, all while getting limited access to the type of birth they desire to have. Oftentimes, I say that our hospital birth, out-of-hospital birth, has been appropriated. Let's look at the pregnant single mother of 5. White women are oftentimes celebrated by their large families when Black women are judged and asked more often than not if they have the same father. Black women are looked down on and judged. You may be thinking, well, single motherhood is running rampant within the Black community. Let me address that. We live in a system that influences it. Look into the policies surrounding government housing, police brutality, and let us not forget the war on drugs. And then, dare I say, the lack of representation of Black families. We do exist. The culture says we don't. Shaniqua is college educated, and judgment can come by her simply making a phone call. She may be overlooked and not paid attention to simply because her name implies that she's ghetto, uneducated, and on welfare. Welfare doesn't pay much for doctor's visits, but it's cha-ching for a C-section. Same goes for private insurance as well. Now tell me why Black women lead in C-sections. I digress. A pregnant teenager, no matter the race, is discriminated against. Add in the fact that she's Black, and there are a ton of other implications. What about the woman living in a food desert with no personal transportation? Well, that limits access to not only good, nutrient-dense food to grow a healthy baby, but it also limits her accessibility to proper health care. Lastly, how about the woman, the working mother, with no vacation or time off? This leads to her skipping appointments. If she takes off, she loses money, and if she loses money, she can't pay her electricity bill, which then leads her to seeing the doctor 3 times, maybe. The first time is to confirm her pregnancy. The second time is at her 20-week appointment to see her baby and make sure things are fine. And do you know when the next time she sees a doctor will be? When she's in labor. And notice I said a doctor, not her doctor. This sets her up for a possibly deadly experience at the hospital with doctors and nurses classifying her as negligent and irresponsible, and yes, even a drug addict. These experiences influence how practitioners view women in childbirth. These experiences only terrify mothers as they carry their children, and it is very real to Black women who find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy. I am not, nor will I ever make a case for abortion, but I will fight tooth and nail to humanize Black women. I implore you to hear our stories. You will never fully understand our plight, but there is much more to us than a decision of whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. And it's not just Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood that's doing the damage. No, it's the systems at play. A country whose foundation is built on white supremacy. You see, in my community of South Dallas, all of the situations listed above are real. My community leads in infant mortality, preterm birth, low birth weight babies, and teen pregnancy. Only 35% of women in Dallas County receive prenatal care in their first trimester. We also lead in heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. Areas of South Dallas are a food desert as well. All this in a city that ranks #2 in childhood poverty and #1 in the production of millionaires in this country. In Texas, our maternal mortality rate is 35 out of 100,000. For Black women in Texas, it is 80 to 100 out of 100,000. It should be less than 10 out of 100,000. What is happening in my community and many densely populated Black communities across the country was created. You see, I'd venture to say that anything that was built can be torn down. Living in a racist, ableist, and classist society is something that we can change. Let's see what UCLA obstetrician and gynecologist Dr. Michael Liu has to say.
biggest myth about racial ethnic disparities in infant mortality is that people think that this has to do with just socioeconomics, and that the disparities are really the consequences of racial differences in socioeconomic status. And it isn't that simple.
Infant mortality among white American women with a college degree or higher is about 4 deaths per 1,000 births. But among African American women with the same level of education, infant mortality is about 10 per 1,000 births, almost 3 times higher. In fact, African American mothers with a college degree have worse birth outcomes than white mothers without a high school education.
Think about this. We're talking about African American doctors, lawyers, and business executives, and they still have a higher infant mortality rate than non-Hispanic white women who never went to high school in the first place. So what I've been calling for is rethinking of an old problem from a new perspective, and to really rethink racial and ethnic disparities in birth outcomes from the life force perspective. Simply put, the life force perspective posits that birth outcomes are the product of not simply the 9 months of pregnancy, but really the consequences of differential exposures across the life force of women of color. We know that racism is stressful, and we know that stress can impact on health in many different ways. It creates this chronic wear and tear on your body's systems to adapt. It wears on the hormonal system, it wears on the immune inflammatory functions, it wears on the metabolic functions, and over time creates an overload on all these organs and systems so that they no longer function optimally.
Everyday racism is like gunning the engine of a car without ever letting up. In fact, people who've looked at blood pressures, measuring ambulatory blood pressures for white folks and black folks, young folks, see that the blood pressures might be the same during the day, but at night the white folks' blood pressures would drop, and the black folks' blood pressures would stay the same. And so it's like gunning the engine of that car, just wearing it out without rest. And I think that the stresses of everyday racism are doing that. And then if you were to carry that into pregnancy, then that gets embedded in the pregnancy physiology of the mother and the developmental biology of the child. Surely have done a lot in terms of increasing access and utilization of prenatal care, especially among communities of color, and it was done very little to reduce prematurity rates. I think that the problem is that with prenatal care, you're trying to cram all these good things into less than 9 months of prenatal care, and then expecting everything to turn out right in the end, and to expect prenatal care in less than 9 months to reverse all the cumulative disadvantages and iniquities that's being carried forth over life course differential exposures, is probably expecting too much of prenatal care. So if we're serious about improving birth outcomes and reducing disparities, we've got to start taking care of women before pregnancy. And I'm not just talking about that 1 visit 3 months preconceptionally, talking about when she's a baby inside her mother's womb, now infant and child, adolescent, and really taking care of women and families across their life course if we really want to do something about improving pregnancy outcomes.
Now that I've laid all of this on you, what do we do? My challenge to you is to be cognizant of your message. In your attempt at being a voice for the voiceless, actually be a voice for the voiceless. The voiceless no longer hang from trees. The voiceless are the very people you sit next to without knowing their story. The voiceless are actually screaming. We have for generations, to little or no avail, and oftentimes those screams have fallen on deaf ears. Sitting in this room today are people who would define themselves as allies. Well, I am here to tell you that we need no more allies. We need accomplices. Allies are great in that they amplify the voices of people of color. They share posts, attend marches, speak out against injustices. But let me tell you what an accomplice is. An accomplice sees injustice and does something about it. They don't leave it up to Black and brown people to bear the weight. Accomplices recognize their privilege and refuse to sit comfortably in it. They know they did not earn it, nor do they deserve it, but they use it for good. And not the type of good that makes you feel good about themselves. They use it to bring about true justice. True justice requires consistency. And if there is anyone right now who can step into the place of consistency, it is the very people in this room. It doesn't mean watering down your message. It means being inclusive and really living out what it means to be womb to tomb. It means health care for any person in need. It means women having the ability to birth how and where on her terms. It means changing your standards so that you are offering culturally relevant and competent care. It means unpacking your own biases, stripping yourselves of them, and committing to doing better. It means leading with compassion towards those who have different opinions than you. It means being willing and bold enough to care more about ending the war than winning it. Justice is recognizing that Black lives matter before, during, and beyond pregnancy. So what do? You can support organizations, shameless plug, such as Abide Women's Health Services, where we exist to improve birth outcomes in communities with the lowest quality of care by offering health care and complementary services that are easily accessible, holistic, evidence-based, and free from judgment. Our core values consist of human flourishing, life-affirming, or intrinsic human value, racial conciliation, equity, reparations, redemptive justice, inventive systems, and posture of heart. You may find a detailed description of what these mean on our website at abidewomen.org. Support doulas and organizations committed to improving equity in midwifery for women of color. Organizations that are committed to serving all women, but understand that there is a crisis at hand and choose to center Black women. Look up Jenny Joseph with Common Sense Childbirth and follow her groundbreaking work. Support organizations that are part of the Perinatal Task Force and our perinatal safe spots for women in maternal toxic environments. Donate to your local justice activists putting forth emotional labor to educate the masses. My PayPal is paypal.me/Cessilye Smith. You can listen to Black women all over the country with views across the spectrum. Listening to Black women is something you must begin doing. And not just conservative religious women that may fit your narrative. All women. I'm talking about the women who know their communities, women that are selflessly giving up their time to support Black women and oftentimes go unpaid, because it's Black women who are dying at disproportionate rates. You see, oh, no, it's not. The women in this slide are activists, athletes, poets, authors, musicians, scientists, and legends in their own right. I included them to show you images of Black women that are left out of the conversation. Images of women who matter, women who are more than a statistic, the Black women we talk about, but not to. The video I will end with is of my hero. Okay, so the video I will end with you, thank you for your patience, everyone. The video I will end with you is of my hero, my sister. I had the opportunity to support her as her doula during the birth of her firstborn, who shares a birthday with my firstborn. My sister is a Black woman, as you can see. If it were not for the birth team offering compassionate, culturally competent care with the understanding of the risks of childbirth for Black women, my sister may not be here today. The day she became a mother was the day that the maternal health crisis that I speak of slapped me in the face. It showed me that the risks are more than real, and it showed me that they can be prevented with the right team committed to the genuine health and well-being of Black women and our babies. So in your fight to support the lives of the unborn, I implore you to know, hear, see, trust, and support Black women.
There you go.